Hi, welcome to our foundation program. This is the first video and the mother of the foundation program, the core breath. We're starting with this because it's the most important thing to get, and everything includes the core breath from here on forward. The core breath is proper core engagement that includes 4 parts. So usually when people say, what is the core? Then they'll say, oh, it's right here. Or some people understand that it's here and here. So kind of like a corset around. That's only half of the story. And that's actually not the core, the entire core. The core is, yes, here. And the very inside layer of that is called the transverse. And then back here, yes, and the very inside layer, it's called the multifidus. Those 2 parts, the transverse and multifidus, are literally attached to the pelvic floor, which is actually a super important part of the core. So we have front, back, bottom, the pelvic floor, and then the top, which is the diaphragm. The top kind of comes along for the ride because it's being helped by gravity. But the pelvic floor, the bottom, is not being helped by gravity, which is why it's causing us some problems. So the core breath is a way to engage your core that includes this entire core 4, as we call it. So basically imagine like a cylinder like this. So we've got front, back, bottom, and top, okay? So a cylinder. This is supposed to work synergistically together like this with your breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. But unfortunately, in our world, fitness world and health world, that's not what we're doing. In the fitness world, a very common thing is we say things like, brace your core by putting belly button to the spine. Well, unfortunately, when you put only belly button to the spine, you're creating an intra-abdominal pressure that has to go one place, because actually 2 places, because of gravity. So it either comes out here and makes things like vastus recti, which we'll discuss later, worse, or it goes here at the bottom. It has to go in one of those 2 places. So it's exasperating the problems that postnatal moms and women are having. And by postnatal, by the way, I don't mean I just had my baby last week. I mean, you may have had your baby like not hundreds, but 40 years ago. Anyway, so it is of ultra importance that we learn how to engage like this properly, because then we can move at the gym, in any movement in life, safely without causing things like leakages and prolapse and lower back pain and all the other things being caused by ignoring all 4 of the best friends, because all 4 of the best friends have to work together. I want to give you a little bit more information. So I have my model here. And what is the pelvic floor? Because some people don't even, like, we don't have connection with it. So, or we don't know exactly the size of it. So the pelvic floor is everything you see here in red. So it spreads across both sits bones on either side. It runs all the way in the front, like I said earlier, attaches here to the pubic bone, which attaches to the transverse. They do not work separately. They're attached to each other. And then at the back also runs all the way back and attaches here to the spine, which musculature, it's multifidus. So again, they're attached together. And if you look at it from the inside, it's a bowl that's holding all your organs in place. It's a pretty important thing in terms of your body. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew how that was. I'm going to show you, just so you have an idea, on what this actually means. So I'll turn around so that you can see. Actually, when you inhale, fill that cylinder that I described with air. So inhale. Exhale, lift that entire pelvic floor, front, back, side to side. So the entire bowl with the exhale. Look what happens to my stomach when I do that. So to my front area. Inhale. Exhale, lift. Inhale, fill with air. Exhale, lift. So what's happening is I am lifting my pelvic floor. For our purposes with movement and the gym, it's the entire thing. Pelvic floor physios might talk about it a little bit differently because that's a different scope. But for our purposes, we want to lift the entire thing. When I do that, this comes together fascially like this. Same with the back, which is why lower back pain gets taken away by learning this properly and using this in life with movement. So basically, it's like that entire core is actually completely engaged, more so than just doing belly button to the spine. So I will dispel one other myth right here before going down and actually practicing this with you. Kegels. So Kegels are not necessarily a bad thing. The thing is, they're not the complete story again. So Kegels and belly button to the spine, they're both okay things, except they're missing their best friends. The core breath brings these two guys together, Kegels and belly button to the spine. Kegels, if we do a Kegel the way they tell us to do it, it's like me working my bicep this way. Lift and hold, lift and hold, lift and hold, hold, hold. Like this is how they tell us to do Kegels. They say lift and hold, lift and hold. Well, guess what? This muscle is getting weaker, because I am never extending it, and no muscle gets worked that way. Muscles need extension, contraction, extension, contraction. Now I can work it. This muscle is actually getting weaker. If somebody has a pelvic floor that's already tight, and many of us do here in this kind of society because we're so stressed. So we're stressed up here, we're stressed down there also. With that kind of like tension and stress, if you take that and press and hold, lift and hold and lift and hold, you make the situation worse, because it's like an elastic that, you keep pressing until it cracks. So you'd actually almost be better off not to do it at all. So that's our little educational portion. Now I'm just going to switch us over to showing you how it works and having you go along with me and practice it. So lie down like this on the ground. If you have some kind of a low piece of furniture, like an ottoman is ideal to put your feet up, it's actually perfect because it puts your pelvis in the right position for me, so that right now I don't have to get all into posture, which is actually our next video. So this is the reason for putting the feet up. So let's try this here together. So we're going to start by inhaling, filling our canister with air. In that case, at that point, the pelvic floor is actually relaxed. Then when you exhale, I want you to actually blow through your lips, because that sends a different message to the pelvic floor than if you're breathing in and out from the nose. And then at that point, you're going to lift the pelvic floor, front, back, side to side. There is imagery we can use for this. There is pretending there's a jellyfish swimming at the surface of the water. And then when you exhale, you lift the jellyfish up. And then when you inhale, you bring the jellyfish back down. Another example is when you exhale, you lift a blueberry up without making jam. So not too hard. And when you inhale, you put the blueberry back down. Or you could just think of it as a lift, okay? So even that sensation, that contraction sensation, as if you're holding pee or poo. So just as a side of that, don't try it while you're peeing though, because then you could get a urinary tract infection, and I don't want you to have that. So it's just for example purposes that we're using this right now. So inhale, fill with air, relax the pelvic floor. Exhale, blow through your lips and lift. Inhale, relax. Exhale, lift. So practice this a couple of times. I'm going to do 2 more times with you. Inhale, relax. Fill with air. Exhale, lift. Inhale. Exhale, lift the pelvic floor up. So you will be practicing this for the next 5 days. What if you are like some people just cannot feel it at all? Either they've never thought about the pelvic floor before, which is very common. So it's just something brand new. It's a muscle that you haven't even thought about. And now I'm asking you to contact it. So sometimes it takes actually a few days for your mind to catch up with what your body is doing. But what I have found helpful with my clients is if they're having trouble contacting it in the beginning, is using child's pose. So the way we do that is we put 2 fists on top of each other like this, because I want your head to actually be completely relaxed. Knees are apart. And so here you do the same thing. Inhale. Exhale, lift. Inhale, relax. Exhale, lift. Blow out. So you can practice it like that. Once you have the feeling of that, like for the next 5 days, definitely lying down and or child's pose, do it every day. But you can also start practicing it using various kinds of gravity. So seated would be a different kind of gravity, right? Because now I'm like this. Make sure you are sitting right on your sits bones though, because that makes a difference on the posture, which we'll discuss in the next video. You can also, from there, graduate to doing it on your knees like this. And then from here, you would go standing, or you just lift up on the top of your knees and stand up. So the idea is we're trying to change the levels of gravity, and then eventually we get to movement, which is the rest of our videos, which is the hardest part. So we want to practice this for 5 days. And I do this with any client. The first day I see them, I teach them the core breath, and I never start training them for at least 5 days. So this is standard practice here in person, or right now in the video as well. And I know this because over years and years of doing this, and it's just not successful. The rest of the program is not as successful if we're trying to do everything all at once. So we're trying to get this base main habit happening so that it's a pattern that your body gets used to, and you're like, okay, I got it. And then we can move on to movement and adding load and all the other things. So on top of that, there's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and that is a word that's being used very often, and it's called diastasis recti separation. We used to have a much bigger obsession with diastasis recti separation about 10 years ago. So now it's still being talked about, but because we're already addressing it with the core breath and the proper posture and all the things that we're doing, we're not actually as worried about it as we were before. We also know now that 100% of women get diastasis recti separation when they give birth. The thing is that the body is supposed to spontaneously heal that 8 weeks, in those first 8 weeks postnatal. Now here's the little problem, because I do check women and almost 100% have not spontaneously healed. So what's the problem? Posture. And we are going to discuss that in the next video, but I'll just touch on it now so that things start making sense. If you've just had your baby, your belly has come out, you have separated. So what happens is there is rectus abdominis running this way, and there's a fibrous tissue right here. That's what separates. After you've had your baby with breastfeeding and everything, it's supposed to come back together. But here we are. We have been living in this world where we're like this, right? And then we're breastfeeding our baby. And so this, I'll just show you from the side. So I want you to be like this, but because we're here with our computers and we're breastfeeding and we're tired and the whole thing, so now this isn't able to come back together. So this program actually addresses that also. It's whether you have it or not is actually irrelevant, because it's going to be helped by this program regardless. So because diastasis recti, pelvic floor, back, like the whole thing is best friends. They do not work separate from each other, like I said before. So working this works that entire core, front, back, top, bottom, and it helps all the parts just the same. So there we go. First video down. Have fun practicing it, and we'll see you in a couple of days.